Shalom and welcome to Temple Talk from Jerusalem, Israel, the eternal and undivided capital of the people of Israel on the eve of the 50th anniversary of the liberation of Jerusalem today, 27th day of the month of Iyar 5777. It's May 23rd, 2017. And this Shabbat we begin the fourth book of the Torah, the book of Bamidbar, Numbers. First and foremost, though, tonight begins Jerusalem Day, the anniversary of what was then June 7th, 1967, was actually the 28th day of Iyar 5727. Wait, was that 5727?
Yes.
And all week long there have been celebrations here in Jerusalem, and there was the most beautiful, breathtaking, once-in-a-lifetime sound and light show that was projected against the walls of the old city. And we were there on Sunday night, and in fact recorded most of that evening, and we're actually posting sections of it up on the Temple Institute's Facebook page. Very beautiful and inspiring celebration of the heart of the people of Israel, which is Jerusalem. Can't help but thinking of all the verses in the Torah about Jerusalem. And you know, there are 627 verses in the Torah that mention Jerusalem. But you know what comes to mind for me the most this week is the one in Isaiah 66 and verse 10. It's actually a whole paragraph, but it begins, "Be glad with Jerusalem and rejoice in her, all you who love her. Exult with her in exultation, all you who mourn for her, so that you may nurse and be sated from the breast of her consolations, so that you may suck and delight from the glow of her glory. For thus said Hashem, Behold, I will extend peace to her like a river, and the wealth of nations like a surging stream. And you will suckle, you will be carried on the side and dandled on the knees. Like a man whose mother consoled him, so will I console you, and in Jerusalem will you be consoled." And you know what? I got to tell you, the joy and the immense, really, exaltation just at being here in Jerusalem and understanding what it means, this city, what this divine promise is, the divine promise that we've seen already fulfilled, and of course the amazing concept that tonight, which begins Jerusalem Day officially, also in the counting of the Omer, is the aspect which is called the lovingkindness of sovereignty. And just those words, without even going into the deepest Kabbalistic, mystical meaning of what each aspect of the Sfirot, the divine emanations that correspond to these attributes, what it means, just for me to tell you that it's chesed shebemalchut, that it is an aspect of the lovingkindness of sovereignty. That's exactly what this tremendous miracle of Jerusalem is all about. Hashem shining for us this tremendous, compassionate love of His sovereignty, which is Jerusalem. So I'm actually just so excited to have the privilege of being here, and this is really once in a lifetime. Like I say, how often do we get to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the unification of Jerusalem? So happy Jerusalem Day and everything that means, not only for the people of Israel, but for the world. And today, the eve of Jerusalem Day, I had the privilege of ascending the Temple Mount, and Yitzchak and I hope to go again tomorrow on Jerusalem Day proper. Went up today, and I was thinking to myself about, you know, what it means, not only for it to be, you know, obviously all of us that were there today are thinking about not only the 180 paratroopers who gave their lives for Jerusalem on the Temple Mount, but we're thinking about the whole idea of what's been going on in that war and what Jerusalem means to us, and the incredible, cynical, manipulative, exploitive, evil effort that's being made by nations and by organizations like UNESCO and by leaders to deny that the Jewish people have any connection with this city at all. What incredible ultimate irony when the Jewish people's roots are here in Jerusalem and nowhere else. And so I was there on the Temple Mount, and I'm thinking about the fact that we're beginning Book of Numbers this week, which of course the Parsha of Bamidbar, the first Torah portion, begins with all these families of Israel, right? The census, all these families of Israel that are surrounding the tabernacle, going forth from Egypt, which is in itself was just this unbelievable thing, that this nation exited from Egypt, and at a time when the whole world was totally idolatrous. And there we are, in the desert, in the wilderness, surrounding the tabernacle, and marching towards the land of Israel. And one of the things that's emphasized in the Torah portion are the flags of the tribes. And of course, you know, we have this unbelievable teaching that our sages tell us that the positions of the tribes of Israel around the tabernacle was the exact position of each of the sons of Jacob around his deathbed. Mm-hmm. He was like the tabernacle, as it were, and that those were to be the positions of the tribes around the tabernacle. They all have these flags. And where do the flags come from? Remember the concept of the flags of the nation of Israel. I think it's also the first mention of the concept of flags in Torah literature. So the sages state in the Midrash that when Israel stood at the Sinai revelation at Mount Sinai to receive the Torah, all the heavenly hosts of angels descended upon Mount Sinai, and they all were divided into camps, and they all had flags. And from that moment, states the Midrash, people of Israel pined. They had this tremendous desire in their heart to also have flags. What is this really all about? It represents this whole concept that we actually spoke about, for example, last week in the Parsha teaching about how, you know, Na'aseh v'nishma, how we said we will obey, and then we will hear, and Hashem said, who taught my children this secret, right? And it was an imitation of the angels, because the angels, that's what they say, because they're all holiness. And so the concept of wanting to imitate the flags like the angels is reminiscent and indicative of the fact that Israel ascended to this level at Ma'amad Har Sinai, at the revelation of devotion to Hashem. But my point is, make a long story short, it's like, look around you, man. Look around the streets now. Flags everywhere in this month of ER. And this month of ER, which is, as we've been speaking about it the whole month, is so beautiful because it was so dull for so many centuries, you know, thousands of years. The month of ER, you know, the sandwich between Nisan and Sivan. And now all of a sudden, in this month of ER, we have merited to the state of Israel. In this very month, we merited in 1948 to the establishment of the state of Israel, and in 1967 to the unification, liberation of Jerusalem. And you know what? This is a whole new perspective of why our sages say that ER is the month of healing. Not just because of Aleph Yud Yud Resh as Ani Hashem Rofecha, because this is the month of the manna, because this is the month of healing. You know why this is the month of healing? Because this is the month that the state of Israel was born. And that's the greatest healing and light for the whole world. So, I'm just thinking there on the Temple Mount today about all of these things, and just about the miracle and the wonder and the blessing of being in Jerusalem and looking out and seeing the flag of Israel everywhere, not on the Temple Mount, of course, but everywhere else in the city and in the country, and remembering those flags of Parshat Bamidbar, the flags of the tribes of Israel in the desert. It's all one. It's all one thing, and we're moving towards this tremendous destiny. So, I gotta tell you though, another thing that's been very exciting this week here in Israel for some people has been the presidential visit of the Potus, of the President of the United States of America. As we record this program today, he's already leaving. But President Trump was here in Israel for 2 days, whirlwind days, and spoke at the Israel Museum today, gave a major policy speech. He spoke in Yad Vashem very beautifully, and he also spoke in the airport, made a few statements here, and they also visited the arch-terrorist Abbas in Bethlehem. Anyway, the consensus of opinion at the moment, as the pundits struggle and rush to try and interpret what he said and what he didn't say, the consensus of opinion seems to be that he, and I don't think it's rocket science, he spoke in a way that was not disappointing. He spoke quite positively for Israel. He spoke about America's commitment to Israel's defense and qualitative edge. He spoke about the danger of Iran.
He spoke about King David.
He spoke about King David's star on the flag of Israel. He spoke about Israel's roots in this land. He spoke about Israel's survival, and he said he was very inspired by the Jewish people. He spoke about the two temples even, and he spoke about his vision for a peace deal, of course, which is still rather nebulous. He hasn't really explained too much about that, except that it's big.
Well, he explained one thing to Abbas, and that is that peace does not go with encouraging, funding, or rewarding terror.
Right. So when he was with Abbas in Bethlehem, he gave a pretty open jibe by saying that peace doesn't go hand in hand with funding, and he even said rewarding terror.
Yeah.
And obviously he was referring to the fact that Abbas gives salaries to the Palestinian, so-called Palestinian
streets
terrorists.
And schools after terrorists.
And of course the chutzpah of the Holocaust denier Abbas is unparalleled when he gave over his vision for Palestinian and Israeli children playing together. And the man goes and names streets after terrorists who killed the most Jews, and they give out candy in the Palestinian street.
And teach children to grow up to become terrorists.
And they teach children to grow up and be martyrs, or to be martyrs as children, and to kill as many Jews as possible. So that's all one big lie. So interestingly also, pundits are rushing to interpret and discuss what he didn't say, President Trump, when he was here. And again, you know what? By the time this goes on the air, everything might have changed already 1,000 times, because this and that will be revealed about what he meant and what he this and that. But what he didn't say was he didn't mention the two-state solution.
He didn't mention Palestinian state at all.
And he didn't mention, and when Abbas spoke, he talked about how the Palestinian state has to have East Jerusalem as its capital, and how we have to go back to the Saudi initiative, which is the pre-67 borders, and how there has to be refugee status for all the Palestinians. And President Trump did not acknowledge any of that at all. So that the right wing, is so-called, in Israel finds encouraging. I want to say something else, though, here on this eve of Jerusalem Day, Chesed Shabbat Malchut, this day of the horrible bombing in Manchester, England, for which we send our condolences, which I believe, as of this airing, has claimed 22 lives and 59 wounded. That has been claimed by ISIS. And of course, in Saudi Arabia, President Trump, I think rather naively, called for a united front against what he called extremist terror, except for the one time where he made a slip of the tongue and he actually referred to it as Islamic terror. I don't think he knows who he's dealing with, but that's neither here nor there. I wanted to say something else. I wanted to say that there's a headline here that I saw in one of the papers. And here's what it says. It says, as Trump visits Bethlehem, the hunger strike is the elephant in the room. And that headline refers to the fact that Palestinian prisoners in Israel are striking, hunger striking, except for those that are cheating, like Marwan Barghouti, who was caught eating pizza in the toilet in his cell. Meaning the elephant in the room is the hunger strike, meaning that it was kind of anticipated or expected that he would mention it, and the Palestinians may be disappointed. He didn't mention it. Of course, why should he mention the fact that these murderers are whining and striking?
What do you mean
Palestinian
visits?
prisoners? Well, who do you think they are? You think they're political prisoners? They're prisoners because they are murderers. They don't want to eat. Don't eat. I'm not going to be a Jewish mother saying eat, eat. You don't want to eat. Don't eat. But I want to talk about something else because of this headline. The hunger strike is the elephant in the room. So this made me think a little bit about this expression, elephant in the room. So I did some research. Here's what I find. Elephant in the room is an English language metaphorical idiom for an obvious problem or risk no one wants to discuss, or a condition of groupthink no one wants to challenge. It's based on the idea or thought that something as conspicuous as an elephant can appear to be overlooked in codified social interactions, and that the sociology/psychology of repression also operates on the macro scale. And then, of course, here in Wikipedia, there's an interesting idea about the origin of the expression elephant in the room. 1814, Ivan Andreevich Krylov, poet and fabulist, wrote a fable entitled The Inquisitive Man, which tells of a man who goes to a museum and notices all sorts of tiny things, but fails to notice an elephant. The phrase became proverbial, etc., etc. But my point is this. I don't think that the hunger strike of Palestinian murderers is the elephant in the room. I'll tell you what the elephant in the room is. First of all, the elephant in the room is the Temple Mount. Like, I'm standing there at this beautiful event on Sunday night, which we filmed and which is on YouTube, and which we're putting up in segments on the Temple Institute Facebook page. On YouTube also, Yitzchak?
Yes, of course.
And I got to tell you again, it was absolutely breathtaking. It was one of the most beautiful, spectacular things that I've ever seen, and I was so happy to be there. But it was more or less about the Western Wall, although the Temple Mount was also mentioned, and it was mentioned. But of course, when President Reuven spoke about Jerusalem, and when Netanyahu spoke about Jerusalem, they didn't really relate to the fact that Jews are not allowed to pray at their holiest place. Now, I could have stood there amongst the tens and tens, was it hundreds of thousands of people gathered around Jaffa Gate, and I could have griped and said to myself, "Oh, this is all fake. I'm gonna complain and whine about this because I know this isn't real because they're ignoring the temple." But that wasn't my attitude. My attitude was joyous and happy because you know what? Slowly, slowly, that's how the redemption of Israel works. Slowly, slowly, and the fact is, look, you had the deputy foreign minister Tzipi Chotoveli made a short clip amongst other people that are being shown by temple activists this week, wherein she called for people to go up on the Temple Mount. I mean, the Temple Mount has, in the public discourse, has changed so dramatically and so drastically over the past few years, largely due to our work, if I may say so myself. I went to the Temple Mount this morning, I didn't even recognize most of the people that were going. The people that used to go years ago were marginalized, were demonized. They were considered to be such a small group of troublemakers. You know who goes to the Temple Mount now? Hundreds and hundreds of people a day. Beautiful Jews from all walks of life that go to the Temple Mount, and that's because it's a whole different thing now. It's become part of the public discourse. It's become part of public consciousness. And there's no going back to what it used to be. And everybody knows that. The police know that. The authorities know that. The Prime Minister knows that. It's not going to go back to what it was. And so my attitude when I saw this beautiful presentation about Jerusalem that kind of sidestepped the issue of the Temple Mount was, okay, its time is coming because time can't go back. But that is one of the elephants in the room. But that's only the ear or the trunk or the tail of the elephant in the room, believe it or not. The Temple Mount.
Now you've got my ear.
That's only part of the elephant in the room. The massive body of the elephant in the room, according to our definition of what that means, the thing that we can't discuss, what it really is, and I say this with a heart that's fluctuating between the unspeakable, indescribable joy of being a resident of Jerusalem and the pathos and the angst of knowing that things are not yet as they should be. The real elephant in the room is the ambivalent attitude of this government and every government that it has succeeded since 1967 as to who are we, what is our destiny, where are we going. 50 years later, we still have military administration in Judea and Samaria. This week is not only the 50th anniversary of the liberation of Jerusalem, it's also the 50th anniversary of the liberation of Judea and Samaria, the heartland of the land of Israel. And unfortunately, we are beset by a lack of confidence and a lack of conviction in the righteousness of our own path. And that is the elephant in the room. And the Har HaBayit, which is the Bayit, which is the house, which is everything, which is the most important issue of all facing us, the Temple Mount, believe it or not, is not even the real elephant in the room, because it's a manifestation. The problem that we're having with the Temple Mount is a manifestation of the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room really is, what do you say about what Hashem has done for us after all of these years? We need the Prime Minister to be a man who fears God and no one else. We need the government of Israel to stand up and say, this is ours, this is who we are, this is where we belong. And if you don't like it, have a nice day. Or don't. But like, we're here to stay. And that's all there is to it. And that's the elephant in the room. And there's no other word that I can think of other than ambivalence. We can't seem to make up our minds. And all that the government has done is just delay it. Ignore the problem and just bequeath it to another generation and another generation, instead of just standing up and saying, this is it. This is Israel. This is our capital. So, the President Trump came on the eve of Jerusalem Day, and he spoke very positively for the side of Israel and for Jewish concerns and for the Jewish connection in the state of Israel. And now what we need to do, what the Prime Minister needs to do, is he needs to declare that we are going to be doing unlimited building in Jerusalem, unlimited building in Judea and Samaria, that we're not going to call these communities settlements anymore, that this is our land. That's a beautiful celebration of 50 years. That's how we would finally slaughter, but of course in a kosher way, the elephant. That's how we need to do it. We need to slaughter the elephant by saying, you know what, we got nothing to apologize for, and 50 years is long enough to be dancing around in circles and not just admitting and shouting from the rooftops, we're here to stay. Thank God, thank God, thank God for the state of Israel, for Jerusalem, for Judea and Samaria. Thank you, Mr. President Trump, for recognizing that. And now it's time for us to recognize that, for our Prime Minister to recognize that, and unabashedly and without any fear to declare that we're going to now do what we need to do for the next 50 years. Happy Jerusalem Day. Don't go anywhere. We're just warming up. Temple Talk.
Shalom and welcome back to Temple Talk. This is Yitzchak Reuven with Rabbi Richman here in Jerusalem, Israel. Today, the 27th day of the month of ER 5777, the 23rd day of May 2017. It's the 42nd day of the counting of the Omer. This coming Shabbat, we begin the book of Numbers, reading Parshat Bamidbar. This Thursday night, Friday, is Rosh Chodesh, the new month of Sivan, which of course means that next Tuesday night, Wednesday, is Shavuot, the holiday of Shavuot, after the completion of the 7 full weeks of the counting of the Omer. And once again tonight, which is the 29th day of...
28th.
I'm sorry, the 28th day of the month of Iyar is Jerusalem Day, Yom Yerushalayim, a day we have celebrated every day for the past 50 years, marking the liberation and the reunification of the city of Jerusalem, the jewel in the crown of the state of Israel. And this year, of course, the 50th Jubilee anniversary of the liberation of Jerusalem. Wonderful celebrations and commemorations all week long. Rabbi, you mentioned earlier the elephant in the room. You mentioned at the beautiful light and sound happening event that you attended on Sunday nights, that Netanyahu talked and Reuven, the president of Israel, talked. And I don't know, you said they mentioned, maybe somebody mentioned the Temple Mount, but in passing. I found it interesting that I saw last night an excerpt from a speech that Reuven gave. I don't know if it was at that event or somewhere else, but in commemoration of Jerusalem Day. And of course, his family has deep roots in Jerusalem. They were among the first Jewish pioneers to settle and build neighborhoods outside the old
As a matter of fact,
the walls of Jerusalem.
he spoke very beautifully, President Reuven, at that event, and he talked about his grandfather, and it was really moving.
Mm-hmm.
They were real pioneers.
But he also mentioned the fact that that while there was British rule here in Israel, that it's a very famous incident of Jews would try to go to the Kotel, to the Western Wall, on Rosh Hashanah and blow the shofar. And of course, the British authorities would not allow it. It was too provocative. It would enrage the Arabs. And he was mitpaer. He was basking in the fact that you can blow the shofar now at the Western Wall. You know, we've come that far. But of course, what didn't he mention? The elephant in the room. Also, at the same ceremony, they played the beautiful, wonderful song "Jerusalem of Gold," "Yerushalayim Shel Zahav," written by Naomi Shemer, which has been described as Israel's unofficial national anthem. And she wrote it, began writing it weeks before the outbreak of the war in '67, and she wrote it as a longing for Jerusalem, which was cut off. The old city was cut off from Jews. And of course, after the war, she added a few more verses. But in that song, which they also played at the ceremony that you attended, she also says the first version said that things are silent on the Temple Mount where Jews can't go. And the second version say, now we play the shofar on the Temple Mount. Now we blow the shofar, which was a wonderful concept and a wonderful dream. But again, for some reason, we can't pray or blow a shofar on the Temple Mount, and that's a real elephant in the room here.
And again, the ceremony was so breathtaking and so lovely and inspiring. And look, the Temple Mount was mentioned in it, and they played the part of the audio-visual presentation was the original footage, the original audio tracks
Mm-hmm.
of the famed announcement made by the commander of the paratroopers, Matagor, about how they were reaching the Temple Mount and how they were moving towards the Temple Mount, and then they got there and he said, "Cease fire. The Temple Mount is in our hands," and it's very, very moving. And then though, it's like it moves the focus to the Kotel.
Mm-hmm.
Now you know that the Mishnah tells us in an ultimate irony, this expression that. One is not allowed to use the Temple Mount as a shortcut.
Right.
Let's say that you want to go from point A to point B, and the shortest way is to go through the Temple Mount. That's a prohibition because it shows a lack of reverence for the place of the sanctuary. So as it's been said, very much tongue-in-cheek, in 1967, basically, we ended up making the Temple Mount into a shortcut to the Western Wall. And this is part of the elephant again. So let me revise my whole thing about the elephant in the room. It's not just the Temple Mount, and it's not even just the bigger issue of the ambivalence and the lack of conviction that our government suffers from as to our rights to this place. The real elephant in the room, the super elephant in the room, is the Holy Temple. The real elephant in the room, just in time for the festival of Shavuot, which we're celebrating next week, in this month of Sivan, time of the giving of the Torah. The real elephant in the room is the Torah itself. The Torah itself, and the fact that we are destined to be the people that Hashem took out of Egypt, that lives according to his Torah, that keeps his mitzvot, that cherishes the land of Israel, that brings light into the world, that builds the Holy Temple. And all this stuff about everything else, this postponing that inevitable, these dancing round in circles and ignoring the problem, the real issue. But even President Reuven said a beautiful thing at that ceremony. You know what he said? I was so proud of him. He said, Jerusalem is not the problem. Jerusalem
Yes.
is the solution. And so I'll take that a step further. The solution that every prophet of Israel tells us about is the Holy Temple. For my house shall be called a house of prayer for all people. That's the solution. And so this is what everybody's afraid to talk about. This is what everybody is in denial about. This is what, oh my, don't start talking that way. Don't be a radical. Don't be an extremist. Don't be this. Don't be that. You know what? That is normative Judaism. That is the normative lifestyle of the Jewish people, that we live as we are in this week's Torah portion of Bamidbar, going into the desert even with the tabernacle, taking it into the land of Israel, erecting it, and living like one man, focused with one heart, beating, and that is with the Shekhinah in our midst. And in this week's video presentation of Parshat Bamidbar, I hope to be speaking a lot about the Shekhinah. The thing, a little teaser for you there. The thing is, this is the major elephant in the room when I talk about who we are as a people, our destiny, what we are charged to do. It's to build the Holy Temple. And so, here we are on Jerusalem Day, 50 years that we've merited to see this unbelievable time in history, and that we are so totally in thankfulness to Hashem. We're going to say Hallel tomorrow morning. We're going to say the festive prayers of thanksgiving to Hashem for this miracle in our time. But the fact is, it is the first step in the building of the Holy Temple. And if we don't talk about that, and if we don't recognize that, then we really are engaging in avoidance, and we really are fulfilling every aspect of the definition of the elephant in the room. And last week we mentioned this beautiful teaching about how the Levites in the Holy Temple, when they were being put to death by the Romans, when the temple was in flames, it was a Saturday night, the Midrash says, and yet they were singing the Psalm of Wednesday. And that psalm begins with the words, God of vengeance, shine forth. And how everybody always assumed that the Midrash is teaching that the Levites were asking Hashem to avenge the desecration of his name. And that's the interpretation that you could have made, for 2,000 years. But in our generation, we merit to have a new vision. And we understand really what the Levites were doing was that they were prophesizing. They were prophesizing that the continuation of the temple service is going to begin on a Wednesday. Because 50 years ago, the 28th of Iyar, like it does this year, it was on a Wednesday. And that day, when Jerusalem was liberated, was the first step in the rebuilding of the Holy Temple.
You mentioned earlier, Rabbi, ambivalence, as described all our governments as being very ambivalent towards what's our destiny, do we belong here, are we going to take ownership of what is ours? And in 1948, when Ben-Gurion declared the State of Israel, he was going against every ambivalent opinion of the people who surrounded him. Everyone said to him, don't do it now, now's not the right time, no one will accept it, And he said, if we don't do it now, it'll never happen. So he put ambivalence in its place, and he was very, very forthright. And you know what? He was right, and that's why we're celebrating in this month of Iyar the creation of the State of Israel. In 1967, very interesting, leading up to the war, there was so much ambivalence. The government didn't know, and even during the war, when it seemed like Jordan was retreating, they were hesitating whether they were going to enter into the old city. But at a certain point, when a ceasefire was about to be called, that's when all of a sudden the defense minister at the time, Moshe Dayan, decided, I'm going to go for it. So thank God he finally ditched the ambivalence. But it's a very powerful lesson that you can learn from that war, the balance between ambivalence and just moving. Israel preempted the war in a very, very daring mission where they completely decimated the Egyptian Air Force, which was superior to the Israeli Air Force at the time in terms of numbers, and that changed the entire balance of the war. But we have to ditch the ambivalence and just move forward. Every time we have done that, the world falls in line. When Israel under Begin attacked the nuclear facility, the nuclear plant in Iraq in 1981. You know, Begin didn't ask anybody, and I think he told America when the planes were in the air, and okay, so people got upset, but they got over it. Enough with ambivalence, and nobody has, I mean, Trump was just here, and the fact of the matter is he set up no stumbling blocks for us to move forward in our destiny and to strive forward.
We got to slow down because we don't know what's going to happen, what he's going to say when he gets back, and what Tillerson is going to say, and what all the State Department is going to say. But like, exactly, who cares?
You know,
who cares?
I was learning about a certain machloket, a certain difference of opinion concerning this week's Parsha Bamidbar, and that is, and someone was telling me about it. I didn't learn it directly, and I think the discussion might have been, the difference of opinion was between the Ramban and the Rambam. And talking about, we know that, as it's described in Bamidbar, this week's Parsha, that the 12 tribal encampments all were set up encircling the tabernacle, which was in the center of the encampments, and which itself was surrounded by the encampments of the Levites. And of course, this way, Israel could move forward in the deserts with the heart being the tabernacle in the center, well protected. But apparently some opinion has it that when they traveled, the Levites would actually lead the way, carrying all the pieces of the tabernacle, plus all the vessels, the altars, and the menorah, and the showbread table, and of course the Ark of the Covenant, and they would lead the way. And it seemed to be a difference of understanding of who leads the way and how do you move forward. Do you put your strength forward? Do you put God in front because that's your strength when you're moving toward your destiny, or do you keep God, the tabernacle, protected at all times? In either case, however, you're moving toward your destiny, and you're not moving in circles. And I think that is a legitimate and genuine, difference of opinion that we can have as we move forward. But we have to move forward, and simply avoiding the elephant in the room and simply treading water and kicking the can, kicking the ball down the court, down the field for the next generation, is not the way to move forward.
Now, I hate to make you think that this room that we're sitting in is full of elephants, but I think there's another elephant.
Was it me? Was it something I said?
Well, first I was talking about our elephant. Our elephant. Our elephant is, our ambivalence. One manifestation is the irony of our lack of self-respect to enable ourselves to be able to pray at the Temple Mount. I mentioned that, and again, especially this week, and especially, for example, at that event, President Reuven and Netanyahu were lauding Israel over its protection of all religions, which is absolutely true. And the Christians that are being slaughtered in the Middle East, and how Israel safeguards the holy places and protects the rights of all religions, except when it comes to the Jewish people, except when it comes to their ability to pray on the Temple Mount. Mentioned the elephant's manifestation as the ambivalent attitude about our presence in Judea and Samaria. That's our elephant. That's like the Jewish elephant. But there's another elephant.
Uh-huh.
President Trump was with Mahmoud Abbas today in Bethlehem, and I heard the speech that Mahmoud Abbas gave. And basically, besides calling for the adoption of the Saudi initiative, which would have Israel reduced to the pre-67 borders, and the return of so-called Palestinian refugees, and East Jerusalem as the capital of the Palestinian state, The main emphasis in Abbas's speech was that the whole problem is Israel's occupation, and that if it wouldn't be for Israel's occupation of the Palestinians and of Palestine, everything would be fine. Everything would be peaceful. We would be in total peace, and that's the problem, the occupation. The elephant in the room, one aspect, one manifestation of this elephant in the room is the fact that, of course, the PLO, which is Abbas's organization, which became the Palestinian Authority, was founded years before the so-called Israeli occupation began, because the 1967 war was in 1967, but the PLO was founded in 1964, I believe. And therefore, we all know it's got nothing to do with occupation, and it's got everything to do with the existence of the State of Israel. So that's one thing that needs to be called out, and that's an elephant in the room. But I'll tell you the bigger elephant, because here
An
too,
even bigger elephant?
here too, that is a manifestation. That is the tail of the elephant. Another manifestation is the fact that today, Islamic State claimed responsibility for a suicide bombing at an Ariana Grande, is that how her name is pronounced, concert in Manchester last night. Most recent updates reported 22 killed, 59 injured, many of the victims being children, making this Britain's deadliest terror attack since the London bombings of 2005. British police say they know the identity of the bomber, and they've also made an arrest. You know what? The elephant in the room, once again, hey, it's not the elephant in the room. It's the elephant in the world. It's the elephant that is trudging through Europe. It's the elephant that has taken over London. It's the elephant in all the European countries, and that elephant, as you know, is Islam. You want to call it radical Islam? You see your expression? That's what the elephant in the room is all about. It's about not. Wait, let me find that definition again. Wait, where is it? Here it is. Elephant in the room is an English language metaphorical idiom for an obvious problem or risk that no one wants to discuss, or a condition of groupthink no one wants to challenge. The elephant in the room, if you're more comfortable calling it radical Islam, fine. The elephant in the room is Islam. And you know what? Here could be manifest as this lying terrorist, praising, terrorist encouraging Jew killer Abbas talking about occupation. In London, it's about what happened today. It is the scourge of this demonic, murderous, bloodlust cult that is dragging the chains through the world. And people who don't want to admit that, we see it. We see what's going on with people who don't want to admit it. We see what's going on with people who can't look at that elephant. And this is what you have now. And that is really, really the world's biggest elephant in the room.
That's the problem. The Holy Temple's a solution. We could boil it down to that, don't you think? Either want peace or you don't. Either want respect
I
or not.
want to express how impressed I am that Iran was such a big part of President Trump's talks with Netanyahu, that he said that Iran should not be enabled to have nuclear weapons and never will. I was very impressed that Trump told Abbas at their joint peace conference in Bethlehem, and I quote, "Peace can never take root in an environment where violence is tolerated, funded, and even rewarded." And of course he was alluding to the fact that Abbas pays the salaries of the Palestinian bombers and to their families. And then later at the Israel Museum, Netanyahu actually said the following words. Today, he said, "Abbas condemned the horrific attack in Manchester, but if the attacker had been Palestinian, the bomber's family would have received a stipend from the Palestinian Authority. That's law, and that must change." So at least President Trump seems to be looking at the elephant, if not looking at it right into his eyes, he's definitely confronting the presence of the elephant.
Much more so than past presidents.
Oh my goodness, I guess.
A world of difference. Speaking of a world of difference, Rabbi, as we're about to wrap it up here, tonight, once again, beginning Yom Yerushalayim, Jerusalem Day, and it really is a joy-filled day for everybody in the world. Everybody who wants peace, everybody who loves the God of Israel, everybody who dreams of a better world.
Hope for the future, hope for the world. The hope for the future and the hope for the world is Jerusalem.
So we wish for everybody a wonderful, wonderful day. And even if you're not here in Jerusalem, put Jerusalem top of your heart. Think about it. Contemplate what the future holds for us as long as we move forward toward our destiny here in the land of Israel, toward the building of the Holy Temple, restoration of the divine service, and all good things. Thank you so much for being with us. Yom Yerushalayim Sameach, a happy Jerusalem Day. Temple Talk.